Hey everyone, I'm Follygon, and in this video I'm going to be working on a Voltaic Axe from Monster Hunter for a competition. If you're interested in participating yourself, you can head on over to myminifactory.com/competition and click on the Monster Hunter contest. You can make any weapon as long as it is 3D printable, and of course it has to be from the Monster Hunter universe. You have artistic freedom in this contest, so you do not have to follow the exact design of the weapon that you choose. I chose to do the Voltaic Axe with some minor adjustments for 3D printing, and I'm going to talk a little bit about my process here, why I chose to make the changes that I did, and how you can avoid a lot of the problem areas with printing your weapon. So we're talking undercuts, overhangs, unflat surfaces, areas that are too thin, and a couple other specific issues that you'll see me run into here. And I'll talk about all those things as they come up. This video will be more focused on the creation of the weapon, but the next episode I release will be more of a tutorial showing you how to key and break out your model for printing. Alright, so let's dive right in here. Alright, so the Voltaic Axe, or at least we're looking at the handle of it. At least to my understanding, if I'm remembering correctly, I googled what Voltaic was. I think it's a synonym for oh gosh, what's the word? Galvanic, like to galvanize, which I believe it just relates to electricity, voltaic, and I think galvanic specifically relates to chemical reactions. But anyway, working on the handle here, just using the ZModeler tool, the ZModeler brush, to kind of box model the shapes that I'm looking at. So in this sculpt, what I'm going to be doing is a lot of box modeling, as well as like sculpting primitive shapes and then Z-remeshing them and then box modeling those shapes. So that's just kind of a workflow that I have that kind of works quickly, allows me to get some stuff on the canvas really quick and then go from there. So I am using the Spotlight tool here in ZBrush, which is a really awesome tool for painting textures, but it's also a really great tool if you want to pull up a reference image like I'm doing right here. So Spotlight is under the texture palette in ZBrush. You import an image and then you can add any texture you want to that, or any image. And then it has like a lot of cool functionality, like you saw me knock out the white background of the axe there. So now I just have the axe image floating on my canvas, and I can position that wherever I want, scale it, do whatever I want with it. So really cool. I love using that for just throwing some reference images on my canvas. Do keep in mind, however, that if you're not wanting to use your Spotlight as a texture stamp or as an alpha, which you can kind of like line it up and sculpt a shape or sculpt a texture or paint a texture onto your 3D model, you have to turn off Spotlight projection in your brush palette. And that's located under Brush, Samples, Spotlight Projection. And it's just a real quick toggle. I have it on my quick pop-up menu, so if I import an image and I want to use it as a reference image plane, I can just throw it off to the side, line it up with my image, turn off Spotlight Projection, and then just kind of make changes right over top of that image without worrying about any color or any Z-add or Z-subtraction happening onto my mesh. So a lot of the functionality that you're going to see me be doing while using the ZModeler brush, and I kind of laughed a little bit because as I'm thinking about how I went about this, it's pretty much the same workflow that I kind of always use if I'm box modeling anything. I get like the basic shapes, and then pretty much all I do is use the ZModeler tool to mess with edges. So most of the modeling tools that I'm using, or most of the functionality within the ZModeler brush that I'm using, are related to edges. So I'm either adding a poly loop, which is just like an edge, I'm moving that poly loop, I'm creasing it, I'm beveling it, and that's really pretty much all I'm doing for like everything that I use. And then I simply use all my other ZBrush tools to make any other changes that I want to do. So I'm like putting this side scale paneling on the side of the axe here, and the way I'm doing that is I'm just using my mask lasso tool to like seclude the verts that I want to move, and then I just use my my transpose tool and or my move brush to move those vertices exactly where I want them. So you'll see me pull up that image quite often, so I'm kind of checking my silhouette very often because I want the proportions to be correct. I want the proportions to be what they are in the video game. But again, like I said in the beginning of this video, some of the stuff that I'm going to do here is going to be changes to the model just to thicken up some parts, to get rid of some really small cracks and crevices, or to make a shape draft back onto the model so you can't have any of these really sharp undercuts on this either if I'm going to be 3D printing this. Especially if I'm going to be doing any type of SLA resin print, I'm not going to want to have to clean any of that resin out of those cracks. That's going to be a pain in the butt. Another thing to keep in mind with that issue, you probably won't be doing this, but from my professional experience, you simply can't have undercuts or overhangs, just because if you're going to be using this to mold something down the line, which is a lot of what I used to do, the parting line or the type of mold that you would have to create for that object would have to be so complicated and so much more expensive or broken up into many molds, and steel molds can run upwards of like $10,000+. So you're looking at, just because of a simple little thing that you could have drafted back onto your model, you're looking at an extra, I don't know, a few $1,000s for an extra piece to split it off. So it's kind of ingrained in me that I get rid of these kind of things, and then it keeps my model really clean for when I'm printing or when I'm making any of these types of shapes in the future. Looking back at our model, we're still blocking in most of the shapes here. If you take a look at this back fin piece and compare it to a concept of the Voltaic Axe, you'll notice that it's not the exact same shape. And this is the kind of stuff that I was talking about where I'm saying I'm gonna have to make some changes here and there, and you're gonna see me make similar changes on that little diamond piece that I just threw in there. I'm gonna draft that back onto the main portion of the axe. But that back fin, the shape that I'm making there is very, very specific, and you'll see me do this later with the horns that are protruding off the back. I'm not sure if they're horns, but that's what I'm going to call them. The horns I have to draft back onto that fin, and the way I do that is I use my rotate transpose tool and push them back in and up against that fin. And the reason I do that is because those horns are going to be so very thin. If you look at the spike up top, that's very thin as well, but that's just a single straight perpendicular piece, so I feel like that's going to be fine for printing. But with these curved horns in the back, I'm absolutely, and here I am making the change now, I'm absolutely going to not want those to be separate. I don't want those to snap off while printing. SLA resin has a lot of trouble with this kind of stuff, and if you're using PLA or ABS or any kind of FDM print, you're going to have a lot of troubles printing that kind of thing, or at least getting a decent resolution out of it. So as I'm working on some of the other shapes here, I'll kind of explain what I'm doing. A lot of the time I'll just Z-remesh as low as possible and try to get some really good edge flow. From there I'll delete a lot of the edge loops. As you see me messing with this front piece here, I'm essentially doing a combination of just, I'm essentially being very lazy. I Z-remesh it and then delete a bunch of edge loops, and I'm like, I don't like this shape, so I subdivide it a bunch of times and like pull it around, and then I just Z-remesh it again, and look at that, I'm like at the exact shape that I wanted it to be. And I could have box modeled this using ZModeler, maybe even faster than I did it, but I try to do stuff as quickly as I can, and this was like the very quick, lazy way for me to do this, and it ended up working pretty well. At this point in my sculpt, I'm kind of bouncing around, pulling up that reference image as much as I can, focusing on each piece, maybe for about, I don't know, 10-15 minutes at the most, and then bouncing around a lot, just to kind of keep everything at the same level of finish, making sure I block in every piece that I possibly can, at least for the time being. Right now I'm working on the part that connects the axe to the handle, and from here you'll see me a little later on try to put this little textured pattern on the side of that. And I had an idea for a method where I would just like put an insert line or a cube on there and subtract it from the handle, kind of like I did for that back portion. I threw a cube in there and subtracted it by doing a Boolean operation, which is pretty simple to do. So I was kind of gonna, like right here you see me drawing on the side of it. I was thinking of using this technique where I would just do a Boolean subtraction. I cut the footage because I didn't use it, so instead what I did was just grab a damn standard brush with lazy mouse and very carefully draw out that pattern. Now for you, watching this in the sped up version of this video, it happened instantly, but I was like sitting over my tablet, like squinting, like being very careful of drawing this line like exactly how I wanted it. Tried like a couple times there at the beginning just to make sure my stroke was correct, you saw that. And then I went from there. So even for me, I definitely kind of think of a bunch of different ways to tackle something, and in the end I typically try to choose the most effective way to do it, but I'm also kind of in the back of my head thinking about how long is this going to take, is there a faster way to do this? All that I really have left here is just to kind of mentally look around my model, thinking more about just the last few shapes that I need to get in to finish the blocking out portion. But also I need to figure out, like, is this going to print? Is this part okay? Is this over here fine? And we're going to be analyzing that a lot more in the next video, which is going to be more tutorial styled and hopefully be a lot more in real time and slowed down so that you can see exactly what I'm talking about, so you can kind of see like the drafting back stuff that I'm doing like I just did on screen. Other than that, the last part of this model that I'm going to be focusing on before I call this portion of the sculpt finished is the axe head. So you just see me pulling up my reference image here, and then I use my slice curve brush just to get it a little bit closer to the silhouette that I'm looking for. And then from there, I use that silhouette as a reference of where I am going to want these kind of 5 different segments. The head is probably where I delineate the most from the sculpt, from the original concept. I don't want a lot of those little cracks and crevices in there, some of the stuff that's a little more difficult to clean out or even print. You don't want a lot of those really thin areas. I could have created some bevels to make that a little bit of a softer transition, but at the same time I kind of wanted to be getting done with this a little bit faster, so I didn't want to spend an extra 2 hours making sure that it was exactly the same as the concept, especially when I could have put my own little spin on it like I did here, which is nice. It's nice to have that kind of artistic freedom, so I can kind of put my own spin on it, create it the way I want, still make it look good, and not feel so bogged down by sticking exactly to a concept. So you'll see me use my slice curve brush there a little bit in the beginning, and then I just go through and Z-remesh all these pieces. I'm doing this kind of the lazy man's way of Z-modeling. I could have box modeled each piece, but again, going for a little bit of a faster kind of workflow, I wanted to just Z-remesh these pieces, kind of get a very simple edge flow, and then from there mess with the topology as I needed. So you'll see me do some interesting stuff here as we get closer to finishing out this last bit, the axe head here. I'm going to start like layering these parts and pieces on top of each other. And the reason I'm doing that is I'm trying to think of a really creative solution to not letting these like tips of the axe point out very sharply. So if you look at the original concept, it's got like these 4 or 5 very specific like silhouetted shapes of this axe head, right? But I want to attempt to avoid that as much as possible just because these pieces get so very thin. So if I can layer them on top of each other and still keep it very visually interesting and very cool and like badass, you know, because that's what I'm going for, then that's like a win-win. So I'm trying to make it good for 3D printing and still make it awesome, like a cool concept, good to look at. So it was a bit of finagling, a bit of like stopping to look at it to kind of think for a minute and just say like, how am I gonna do this? How am I gonna line this up? How am I gonna make this look good and also print? So that just kind of comes with experience. That's something that you kind of just need to practice with and, you know, try a bunch of different solutions. For me, it was kind of something that I thought it would be better to just take a pause, look at it, kind of think of what I've done in the past, how I would tackle this kind of solution creatively, and work from there. Finishing it up, I'm just using my slice curve brush. I love this brush. I use it for like almost everything, and we're actually going to be looking a lot at this brush when it comes to 3D printing because it serves a great purpose for getting very sharp flat surfaces. So we're going to use that to create a flat that we can print on a bed. And this is a technique that I use for FDM printing. If you don't know what that is, that's kind of, it stands for Fusion Deposit Material, I think. Anyway, it's the one that prints kind of from the bottom up. It's a spool of plastic, whatever type of plastic you're using, ABS, PLA, whatever. And then it extrudes out through a heated nozzle onto a heated glass bed typically, and then builds up layer by layer. And what's really great about the slice curve brush is it'll give you a flat that you can print your model on. I do one kind of last quick mental pass for proportions on the axe, and then we're gonna just transition right here to a turntable real quick, show you the final model, and then just to finish off, instead of doing what I normally do, which is a render in ZBrush, I throw this into Keyshot. So I just combined all the parts and pieces, decimated it down, and then threw it in here as an OBJ. So this is a render scene that I created late last year, so it's still pretty new. I tweak it and modify it a little bit here and there. But as you can see, I just throw my axe in here, mess with my lights a little bit, mess with my environment lighting setup, spin some stuff around, just trying to get some interesting light. Not too dark, not too bright, make sure my contrast is good, mess with my material settings a little bit, just little tweaks to this render scene that I've had for a while. And then I render it out. And I always have fun watching the little render, except it's sped up quite a bit here. So in reality, it's a lot slower than that. But anyway, hey guys, here's the final model, just a quick pan up of the finished axe, and then the finished render in full view here for you. Alright, I think that's gonna do it. If you don't know, new videos are uploaded every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so be on the lookout for those, or just go ahead and click that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Hope you learned something new, maybe got a little inspired, and I'll see you next time, guys. Thanks for watching.